All right, hello everyone. That was a pretty good. I waited like I don't know how long on that one, several
You
seconds.
waited a split second.
Welcome, welcome to another discussion of Rings of Power. We are talking about episode 7 today, and I do want to start with an observation, AP, if you will indulge me for a moment. I noticed that you have a tendency to get the numbers wrong on the episodes, on the videos that you release.
Yeah.
Like occasionally you put the wrong number in the description or on the title of the video or even in the thumbnail, I think has happened. And I just want to point out that this is something that you have in common with a character from Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power. In fact, Sauron is notorious for his inability to keep numbers straight. He's always misremembering how many Nazgul there are. Sometimes he thinks it's 9, sometimes 7, sometimes 3. He just gets confused like that. And even to the point where he kind of can't keep track of one ring even. He's constantly losing it. So, I think that that is something that our viewers should think about, this incredible coincidence between you and Sauron.
What's your new book called?
The new book is called While Darkness Gathers.
Yeah, so your autobiography, all about your rise to evil power, and you're going on about AP's occasional problems with numeracy. But yeah, my, my autobiography about how
It's,
I
oh,
am.
hey, it's not an autobiography, it's a biography of my developmental editor, actually.
Hi,
So,
Philip.
hello, AP. How are you doing today?
I'm,
Uh,
I'm pretty good.
that's good. Oh, well, what did you think of episode 7 of Rings of Power, season 2?
And really enjoyed it. Although I will say, like, this is a very action-heavy episode.
Yes, I know,
And
and it's not usually your thing. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I'm gonna say. Like, I really enjoyed it. A lot of the action, I know lots of people enjoy the action set pieces and battles and that sort of thing. That's really not the thing that I find that engrossing. But
Right.
um there was lots going on in this episode that I greatly enjoyed, particularly with Sauron and Celebrimbor,
Yes.
and also Elrond. Like there was some great stuff there. And if you remember the last time we chatted, I said, like Durin needs to make his big political stirring speech. We get Durin Jr. making his big grand political stirring speech.
Yep.
That
Called it.
I an episode early.
You called it. Very nice. Yeah, I agree with you on all those counts. And the apparently something I wasn't aware of until just now was that there's a matter of controversy in this episode, a certain kiss that happens between Elrond and Galadriel, which I didn't realize there was controversy because I read that whole scene as basically him very practically finding a way to give her the brooch that would help her to free herself from the manacles that she was in. And you could see the look on her face, which was like, what? Well, oh, okay, yeah, gotcha. I really think that there was nothing romantic in that kiss whatsoever. But I guess that's not how some folks on the internet are interpreting that.
Well, the other thing is Elrond actually apologizes for it before he does it.
He does, yeah. I mean, they
But
kind of set this up as for the viewer. Yeah, he has to fool, Adar and the orcs that are all around there. But for the viewer, there are enough signals there where it's like, yeah, this is not a romantic kiss. This is Elrond trying to help her get out of there, right?
because, and again, I think it comes down to a lot of the expectations that get set by visual media like film and TV. That
Yeah,
a kiss is this big thing, and
right.
particularly in a lot of our storytelling, they build up to it. But in this, we have as he's walking over to her, Elrond reaches up and takes the brooch off his shoulder. Like we watch him do this. He
Yeah,
he then walks up and says, basically apologizes to her
I'm
in Elven.
sorry. Yeah,
But of course, it has that wonderful double meaning
yeah,
because for the scene, everyone else is going, he's sorry because he's abandoning her. And he's like
right.
going, no, 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 I'm saying sorry so that
Because
they,
I'm about to kiss you. Yeah,
but I'm about to do something that you're not going to be comfortable with.
Right.
So I'm apologizing in advance. He then kisses her slowly and gives her, and we even see the whole exchange thing, but everyone's going, are they kissing? And everyone's watching that instead of the exchange.
Right.
And like she's like, dude, you just kissed me.
Just like, what are you doing? Yeah. Yeah.
Like we're friends. We're not friends.
Right.
And you can see that expression on her face,
Right.
but has the brooch in her hand, and of course that comes in much later on. So I had watched this episode, and randomly, although I can't get round to watching any of this, I just don't have time at the minute.
Right.
But I did a search because I was going, I bet someone is going to complain about this.
And you saw this
I did a
uproar.
search. I was like, oh my God, the internet has collectively lost its mind. But
Wow.
she's his mother-in-law. You know, A, not in the show. B,
Not yet. Yeah.
it was a ploy to give her the thing to break out.
Right.
It was a ploy. But this is all blah 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 blah. And you're like, I looked at it and went, I don't remember people having the same issue with Luke and Leia kissing.
Yeah.
And they're twins.
Yeah. That's a
Um
little bit closer than mother-in-law. Yeah.
um so like
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't
I
know.
don't I really don't understand why people have such an issue with it when the show went out of its way to give Elrond a line to apologize beforehand. And of
Yeah.
course, you have the whole swelling music thing. And I maybe that is the cue that was throwing people off because they have the swelling music in the background. But everything else about it, he apologizes, the look on her face as she reacts, the
Yeah.
fact that it was all a ploy to hand or something. And then you have to think of all of those films and all of those TV shows where someone has gone in and like they've kissed someone, and then as they've walked away, like the person, the kissee,
Yeah.
suddenly spits out the key to something, or
Right.
it's such a common trope
Yeah.
that I didn't realize that the use of a well-established trope was suddenly going to fool people.
I really am surprised about this. Total news to me because you actually even texted me last night and said, "Oh, what do you think about the controversy?" It's like, what controversy? And I couldn't figure out what it was. So obviously I read that scene as a mere ploy.
But
But
this was the people must have watched the episode like really early in the morning in order to record their reaction to get it uploaded the day
yeah.
that it came out because this scene was so important. And you're like,
Well, the
really?
episode actually, there are a couple examples of where this episode creates expectations and defeats them. Later on, we'll get to it, but there's a moment when Elrond is expecting Durin, and we have that sun rising like Gandalf in the Two Towers and Helm's Deep, bringing this army with him. And you expect an army, but that's the expectation that's set up by having this sunrise and all of that. And then there's just one lone rider who appears and you're like, oh, I thought
This
that
is
that's
very
another example where they are taking very Tolkienian expectations and doing their own little tweak on them in ways that I think are not against what Tolkien does necessarily, but they're
okay.
they're they're doing something that is I think putting their own stamp on this in a way that is constantly giving these nods to Tolkien, and that's how I read these things. But anyway,
Yeah, and again, like the sacking of Eregion has to happen
right,
according to Tolkien. So
that's right. Yeah,
but it's weird how all of our expectations are being set up for, oh yeah, the typical trope of, and then the cavalry comes in at the last minute.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you know, and that again is a massive trope in storytelling.
huge.
And
Yeah,
they didn't do it because to do that would mean that Eregion would be saved.
right.
And there's your big lore breaking, canon
Yeah,
breaking.
imagine the uproar there. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Sometimes I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
it
It's
seems like it. Yeah, I mean, wow. But let's backtrack here and take the episode bit by bit, or scene or thread by thread, as it were. I totally agree with you about the strength of the Celebrimbor and Sauron. This has been probably my favorite aspect of this season, has been these marvelous performances by these actors and the whole dynamic between them. And this is the I think psychologically the most interesting part of this episode while all the violence is happening. And the show actually opens with Celebrimbor wandering in this nice sunny day and, taking in the sights and
Having a cup of tea.
having a little tea. And that is the continuation of this illusion that Sauron has woven and entrapped him in. So yeah, let's begin, I guess, with your thoughts on this dynamic, this which goes to some very dark places in this episode, with what happens with Celebrimbor, which is where this has been heading all along. And again, if you're familiar with the lore and all that, this is where it had to go. But I'm interested in the way they're presenting this story. They're fleshing out a story that is just, we have the bare bones of, really. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts on this part of it?
Again, the manipulation of Celebrimbor by Sauron, it has been brilliant and disturbing to see, because everything about it, and again, so much of what Sauron says, there's a grain of truth to it wrapped up in a whole lot of lies. And each time there's a lot of doublespeak about the different aspects. And there, that relationship of the torturer and the torturee, um, I think has been fantastically realized, and it works on on multiple levels about how obsession can take over your life, how addiction can take over your life. Like,
Yeah.
you see a lot of those different aspects in it, and how we can lie to ourselves and self-rationalize, and we can do all of these things, and that is a foundational principle of everything that goes on, and how we can actually give over mastery of ourselves to someone else unknowingly, but it's because they are doing or encouraging us to do the thing that we wanted. And
Yep.
so Celebrimbor, like, quite rightly points out to Sauron, this whole thing that he's abusing him, and Sauron's like, oh no, but this is what Morgoth used to do to me. And we
Yeah.
get this acknowledgement of the cycle of abuse and violence,
Right.
that this can perpetuate down generations, that this happens to one person, they then do it to someone else.
Hmm.
This can happen. And what is great is Celebrimbor looks at him and says, but that's what you're doing to me. And it's, oh no, 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 but you're making me do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what an abuser kind of statement,
Look what you made me do. And
Exactly. Yeah.
um and Celebrimbor comes out with the line that basically accusing Sauron, you're like such a great liar. You can lie even to yourself,
Yeah.
because we create this whole web around that justifies what we are doing and why we had to do it that way. And we really get an explanation of what Sauron wanted. Morgoth, according to Anatar in this, wanted to destroy everything. And
Mm-hmm.
he goes, but I don't. I want to perfect everything. I want
Yeah.
peace. I want order. And that is frightening, because there are a number of ways that you can achieve order,
Uh-huh.
and not all of them are good.
Yeah.
And his idea of mastering all of Middle Earth to make it fit with his design,
Right.
that that was chilling.
Yeah, it was. This is the Sauron of the Silmarillion, and his charisma and his cunning are really brought to the fore here in a way that I find much more interesting and compelling than it's not. This is not a critique of Peter Jackson's films at all, but the Sauron we get there is a giant fiery eye that basically, it's just evil, right? So I find this to be a much more compelling and interesting presentation of the villain, in this story. And it is definitely taking its notes from what we know from what Tolkien wrote in the Silmarillion about this type of villain, right? Fascinating stuff, really. And his there are some really grisly moments in this dynamic between Sauron and Celebrimbor that really stand out to me. And this wrestling of will, where Celebrimbor is trying to free himself, and it's really a psychological battle, but there's a moment where it's literalized, where he actually chops off his own thumb to get free of the manacle that he is in. And I just thought that that was such a powerful literalization of this struggle that he's in, and you know that he's doomed. But the fact that he is trying, and he knows that he's been duped, and he knows his own faults, and he continues to craft the rings out of a sense of despair and desperation. You could say that Sauron has promised, okay, I'll spare your people if you finish these rings. And yeah, I just find this whole downfall of Celebrimbor to be portrayed in such an interesting and tragic and compelling way.
I was going to say it's very classical tragedy.
Yeah,
The hubris, the arrogance of Celebrimbor leads to his downfall. And that is a classic tragic arc.
true.
But I think first of all, it's going to be very difficult for him to hitchhike anymore.
This is true.
And
His
also, he'd be
hitchhiking
a really
days
bad.
are over. Yeah.
And he'd be a really bad film critic because he can't give thing 2 thumbs up
No,
anymore.
can't do any two thumbs up. Oh no. He can't join Siskel and Ebert. Yeah. Oh
I'm a
dear.
bad, bad man.
You're
Uh,
terrible. That's evil, man.
but I think one of the fascinating things is we have this not seesawing of them, but we see the peaks and troughs of the emotion sweep through Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
That moment when he looks at the mind, he's like, "That's kind of strange," and he notes something. Like he is brilliant, even in the midst of this illusion. He thinks it's been weeks.
Yeah.
He has been trapped basically in his own mind and has
Yeah.
been working round the clock, but he thinks he's been working normally. And Sauron has been providing this illusion.
Yeah.
And so that marking of the candle
And the mouse. Yeah.
and watching the mouse and making like you can see the brilliance of his mind that he looks at the reality and goes, no, but I'm gonna check this because something isn't right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he is confronting Anatar, oh, who's the actor who plays Anatar, plays Sauron?
Oh, yeah, I can't remember, but he's doing a brilliant job.
But when he starts getting angry, his voice starts getting lower.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that sudden switch where
Yeah.
someone's, oh, yeah, yeah, but you're not doing the thing that I want. And then it becomes ominous and threatening. And
Yeah.
we see this movement in Celebrimbor, curious, trying to figure things out, being absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Then, but I need to do this thing. And the constant movement that he is still a good character. He still wants to do good. He
Yes.
still wants to save his people.
Yeah.
He is, it's not that he has been corrupted, he has been deceived.
Right.
And faced with how bad everything is, how terribly things are going, he could give in to despair. And we see him like that manacled to the workbench
Yeah.
and working away to finalize these rings. And then when
It's
Sauron,
also manacles of the mind, you know.
he has been chained.
Yeah.
And what are the rings but little tiny mini manacles?
To quote Blake, mind forged manacles, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But he takes the rings and he throws them in the fire.
Yes, he tries. He
He
tries.
throws them in the forge fire and then realizes that you see him like pick them up like
I
they're
can't
still,
destroy these. Yeah.
which harkens back to the Fellowship of the Ring and Gandalf's test of the One Ring.
Yeah.
And we
Also,
see that these. Oh,
oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were finished, but finish your thought and then I'll jump in.
but with this, he realizes the importance of getting these away from from
Yes.
Sauron, and it's
Yes.
whose will is greater, and it
Yes.
even though it leads to that moment of having his film score, it's it is both brutal and tragic and triumphant because
Mm,
that is the strength of Celebrimbor. He
yeah.
That is his sense of duty, his sense of loyalty to his people.
Yeah.
His This is the good intent that he had to save the people of Middle Earth.
Mm,
This is setting aside his pride and his ambition because he has just ruined his ability to ever properly hold his tools again.
he's a craftsman. Yeah. Hands are important.
And he has done it willingly. He chose to do it because he is serving a greater purpose. He is making a self sacrifice. He is recognizing his part in this.
Yeah.
And he is willing to pay that price because it is important to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So, as we had mentioned last week, a lot of the good characters, it's about acknowledging their mistakes
Hmm.
and not dwelling on them, but going, how can I fix this? How can I serve other people? How can I be more in harmony with the world? How can I do all of these things? Whereas with the bad guys, it's all about, no, no, no. Well, I was forced to do that. So now I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to master. You will bend to my will.
Right.
And it's that. So in that moment, at that particular moment, we see Celebrimbor, his redemption, and it's too late, but we see that moment of redemption. And again, this is so common in classic tragedy.
It's like Oedipus poking out his eyes when he realizes, oh, yeah, I actually did do this. Yeah.
Or the realization of Othello about what he has done and
Yep.
then needing to make recompense. That
Yep.
there is that tragic turn where they come to the full realization of what has happened and their true character shines forth, but it's too late.
Right.
The classic tragic arc.
Yeah. There's also a couple, I think, really interesting moments along the way. One where you called this actually, so congratulations again. But the mithril that Sauron or Anatar had handed over turns out not to have been mithril, but actually his ooze, his blood, and that's a kind of cool way, I thought, to realize, oh, that's why the nine are the way they are, right? So your thoughts on that? I have to let you talk about this because you called it actually.
Well, I know a lot of people had a problem with the Order of the Rings and the fact that they have changed ring lore. And
Yeah,
like I get it. That's fine, but this is an adaptation for a general audience.
right,
And this simplifies things a lot. So the Elven rings, Sauron didn't touch.
right,
The three rings for the elves, Sauron has not touched. They are made with pure gold, pure silver, and pure mithril.
yeah,
They are pure and yet still dangerous because of the inherent
powerful.
power
Yeah,
and the lure of power. But they are pure. And then we get the rings for the dwarves. Now, they are made with gold and silver and mithril, but the mithril has been tainted by Sauron because he holds it
right,
and puts it in. There's something that he does with his hand, clasping it as if to imbue it with some of his essence. So he has tainted the process in some way. And these rings do not act like the elven rings.
right,
And here we have a straightforward visual representation of why they don't work the way that they should.
right,
And then we get to the human rings. And we all know what's going to happen to the nine.
right.
And they have been made with gold and silver, but no mithril, no purifying mithril, but with the actual blood of Sauron. So now one of the ingredients is completely different. He has bound part of his being into these rings.
Yeah,
And when we then think of the one ring and how it is going to bind all of the others to him,
nice.
for a lot of people who watch the movies, they're going to know that the one ring controls the nine. And now we know why. Because if he puts his blood into the one ring, now that he knows how to craft rings from these
I mean, no,
particular
he
types.
did. He put his power into the One Ring, right? Yeah.
And so it makes it visually understandable. It provides a rationale for why and how all of the rings operate slightly differently, as
Right.
opposed to they were all elven rings, and then there was this whole thing, and then they hid some of them, and then Sauron found some of them, and then they didn't take the rings off, but they did take the rings off, and then some rings get eaten by dragons. It isn't neat, it isn't clean, it isn't simple enough
Right.
to represent in a TV show for a general audience. This, on the other hand, has sufficient complexity that it actually is an interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
It's not, oh yeah, he just made these things and then he's evil.
Right.
There's a reason and a rationale sort of underlying it, which is actually quite clever, quite a clever way to get this
Yeah.
across to readers who are not as familiar with what's going on. And it suddenly makes like a nice, understandable thing that can be visually represented,
Yeah.
in a TV show.
Yep.
So I looked at that and yeah, I was a little smug because, I'm always a little smug. Um, but the fact that his introduction of his blood
Right.
instead of the purifying mithril. So they are deeply corrupt rings at their very core. And
Right.
Celebrimbor's realization that he has created a monstrosity. These are not works of art. These are horrendous, horrifying, monstrous things because they are totally corrupt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it was a chilling representation, and of course, also a callback to the first episode, the kind of prologue to the first episode of this season, where we saw Sauron made into hamburger by Adar and the orcs and his ooze, reforming and all of that. So they're doing some, whether you like it or not, they are doing some storytelling that is very deliberate and has a lot of foreshadowing and has a lot of callbacks and I think a very interesting presentation of how these rings were actually forged and in a way that is true to the essence, maybe not in the literal order that we're told about the rings and all of that, but I think is true to the essence of the what Tolkien was trying to get across with all these themes once again. And this is what's important to you and to me, I think, themes about power and manipulation and vanity and pride and all of this, and these are all so beautifully woven into this version of how this transpired. So
And even when you think of the power of blood in this, we see the
yeah,
dark wizard in Rune using, well, his acolytes and servants
the blood
using their
magic,
blood. He's not gonna waste his own.
right?
But the idea of the power being in the blood, um, Celebrimbor being of the line of Fëanor, it's in his blood. That there's a lot about lineage and there's a lot about true heirs in Tolkien, which in the modern day can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable
Yeah,
um, about, people being born into special positions and just being better than everyone else because of their bloodline.
right.
There's that that can be a little uncomfortable.
Hmm.
We like to believe a bit more in a meritocracy, but this is part and parcel of some of what Tolkien was using, and even see Adar refer to Elrond's. Is it his great grandmother or great great grandmother or great great great
Oh,
grandmother?
Melion, yes, yeah, the Maion,
Um, well, she is of the people of the Valar.
right? Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
he's a Maiar, right?
yeah.
Is that
But and again, I have a funny feeling. Again, a lot of these things change as Tolkien was writing, and he went back and what's the popular term? Retconned. He went and retconned a whole bunch of things.
yeah.
But yeah, so like Elrond's part god, well, part angelic being.
Yeah,
Uh,
he is actually. Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting amalgamation of human and elf and Maiar. Yeah.
um, so that was all the interesting aspect about lineages and people being destined to do things but still having free will,
Yeah.
I think the show is actually exploring a lot of that, which I enjoy. If I wanted them, or if I had wanted just a recreation of the thing that I had read,
You
you
got
go,
the book.
I have the book to do that. And whatever I imagine, whatever I think of, how I conceive of it, that's going to be far more pleasurable than anyone else's version of it for me, because I'm imagining the things that I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I thought that was quite interesting. Do you want to talk about Arondir for a minute?
Let's do it. Yeah, because he gets a little more screen time in this episode, and
Action man.
yeah, he's the action man in this season especially. And I don't know if it's because the actor who was playing his sort of love interest didn't return to the show, and so they kind of lost a lot of what they might have done with Arondir. I don't know. But they basically have made him an action character with the motivation he wants to get at Adar, and he plays a crucial role in freeing Galadriel in the moment when she's about to be discovered. His arrows appear, zip, 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 and and he's the one who helps her make her final escape there. But and his kind of rash and irrational and angry uh, desire to get Adar. Maybe that's mixed in with the loss of his love interest, and other things. But he's uh, torn in this moment between doing what might be smarter and delaying his revenge, which Galadriel is urging him. No, right now you'll just get caught, and that'll be the end. You have a higher purpose here. But we see in the end, in the battle, that he meets Adar and doesn't fare so well, and it looks like that could be it. We didn't actually see him die, so I'm reserving my judgment there, but is that the end for Arondir in your opinion? I personally feel like he's probably going to be on the verge of death and somehow make it. But what are your thoughts on his thread here?
Um, I let me put it this way. I wouldn't mind if that was his send off.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
uh,
It's almost like they don't know what to do with his character at the moment. I feel like. Do you feel the
his
same?
his storyline became a bit vestigial.
Right,
It
like
did.
an appendix.
The appendices are very important to this show.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Um, One of the things I liked about this, again, when he rescues Galadriel, he's like, I'm going to kill Adar. He is angry. He is being controlled by his emotions. He's not thinking of what is good for other people, how he can best serve. He's trying to serve his own interests.
Right.
Galadriel talks him round. He goes to the city. He's part of the defense of the city. And again, is very effective. He's helping people. This is good. But when he sees Adar,
Mm,
he leaves that role. And he again tries to serve his own interests, to serve his own anger, to serve his own destructive ends.
doesn't end well.
And it doesn't end well. And again, we have the sort of the tragic flaw. And for anyone who thinks, yes, I realize it is psychologically real. I understand that.
Yeah.
But when we see tropes like this one I actually enjoy seeing. It's a reminder to all of us that uh, Erickson and Esselmont do this in the Malazan world, where you have the cold iron versus hot iron.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The cold, rational, logical tactician versus the emotional warrior who's drawing on their emotions to give them energy and strength.
So
Both very
Adar versus Galadriel, you could say, right? Adar clearly cold iron, whereas Galadriel so far has been hot iron. I said
you
hot
you think Galadriel's hot? Okay.
iron. I mean, she is too, but that's not my point. Yeah.
Um, and so we see this with Arondir, that again, it's being consumed by his selfish would be the wrong word, egocentric emotions.
Uh-huh.
He's fixated on what he wants rather than what is best for everyone else.
Right.
And
Or
he's
just lost control of himself in that moment because of his anger. Yeah.
he's blinded by his destructive desires,
Right.
just like Celebrimbor was blinded by his destructive ambition.
And Adar even says to Elrond after he easily defeats Elrond, "You've forgotten your, I forget the name of the code of war for the elves, whatever it was called."
Well, no, it's the drunken poet that Círdan referenced.
Yeah, okay. So you've forgotten, don't lose your temper. If you're led by your anger, you're going to fail. And Adar is in control in that moment. So that's clearly a thread through this.
And Adar, I think, is another fascinating character and exploration here, because here is someone,
Yes, yes.
when we saw that scene where he goes to the sort of the orc funerals,
Yeah, and he has a tear.
he has a tear, but he sends them off to the darkness.
Yeah.
Is he still worshipping Morgoth?
Hmm.
Or is it ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that when
That's
you're
how I
dead,
took it
dead and gone?
initially. Yeah. Yeah.
It's curious because he seems to want to have this freedom from Sauron. He blames Sauron. He hates Sauron. He wants freedom for his people.
Yeah.
But is it still the worship of Morgoth, or is it now? No, but are the closest we are going to get to paradise as the spawn of corrupted elves is here on Middle Earth. After this, there is nothing. We cannot go into a divine world. We cannot go to um, any heavenly plane or any afterlife. That once it's all over, it's all over. And that's what he means by darkness. We don't know, but he is kind of hanging around with more crown.
He's in it. I feel like he's one of the more interesting facets of this show, Adar. And he's key to their exploration of I'm putting this in air quotes, everyone, the humanity of the orcs. He's the whatever you would call that for elves, the idea that they are corrupted elves, that therefore they have souls, that if they have souls, then are they actually capable of good or a redemption? Or, there are a lot of questions and this is something that Tolkien himself set up and never actually resolved. So it's fascinating to me to see this exploration primarily through the character of Adar, whom I see as very much a wronged individual from his perspective, that he was at some point captured and twisted, and maybe he was an ambitious elf or whatever. I don't know what he was like as an elf before he was turned into an Uruk.
He
But
was a field artist. He went, I can't get the trees right in this picture. Ah, right, that's it. I'm a way
that's
off to
it.
join.
Oh no. So he's interesting to me though, because he clearly has elvish memories. He knew Galadriel, wants her approval, wants to be seen as almost like an equal of hers, because she's among the highest of the Noldor and all of that. So I assume that he was somehow in the upper echelon as well at one point before he was captured and twisted and all that. But there's a clear, he loves his children. He loves his people in a way that, I mean, that you can't argue with the tear, man. The tear is genuine. Uh, Now, is it more complicated than just, oh, I love my children? He is willing to sacrifice them in order to achieve what he feels is the greater good in the end, which is their ultimate freedom from the tyranny of a Sauron. So you could say he's utilitarian in his love, perhaps, but that doesn't discount the fact that he feels that what he's doing is necessary in order for the ultimate longer term good of the Uruk, right?
Like Sauron feels that what he's doing is for
Exactly.
the long-term good for everyone,
That's the
because
kid. That's the thing that this show is doing. They're showing us that baddies aren't just pure evil; that they have motives, that they have these justifications, and that they are completely devoted to their much like Satan in Paradise Lost, right? That it's the same kind of trope, if you will. And you've been using that word, and I love it. That's not a negative thing, by the way. When we say it, people, when we say trope, we're just saying this is a tool, this is a pattern that you recognize from storytelling. And you do have a Satan-like trope for both Sauron and in a way Adar, this dedication to the
Yeah.
cause.
Curse those modern writers coming up with this thing, like Milton. Like he's a modern writer who just jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Bandwagon Milton was actually what they called him.
Only when he couldn't see them.
Oh, you're full of it today, aren't you?
How dare you, sir?
So I find the Adar thread through here to be some of the parts that I actually enjoy the most in this series.
But I thought it was interesting because again, with Adar, he says that he loves his children. He clearly has some compassion for them. But when the battle isn't going exactly the way that they planned, and he's given the option, well, why don't we retreat? It's like, no, I need to kill Sauron.
That's the cold iron. That's the long term. This is the and look,
See,
Satan also weeps over his followers in hell. Uh, I
but
think
is
that's
still
genuine.
willing to sacrifice them
Yes.
because
Yeah.
his desire outweighs that.
Well, that's true from our perspective. From his perspective, it's not his desire, it's his vision that outweighs it.
Really, it's not his desire that he repeatedly tells us that he must destroy Sauron.
Yeah, I think he's convinced himself that it's his vision to free the Uruk for good and for all. And the only way to achieve that is to defeat Sauron. He believes this is the moment. If they lose it now, it's gone. And so he is, just, and I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that's his vision and he believes in it.
Yeah, but again, remember what I was saying earlier about Sauron
Yeah.
lying to himself? That I think we're in a very, very similar situation here because
Sure.
he sees the suffering of the orcs. He's meant
Yes.
to care for them and want them, and he's like, and he has been warned by Galadriel. You are playing into Sauron's hands. You are doing
Right.
exactly what Sauron wants you to do.
And he
And
knows it, and he thinks he has enough to defeat Sauron anyway. That's
hubris,
hubris. Hubris. Oh, we said it at the same
hubris.
time. Yeah, hubris. Totally, totally. But that doesn't make. I just enjoy how complex they're making him and
Yeah,
how he's
but again,
convinced.
if you were to pick out the one thing from classic tragedy
Right.
that is the downfall of so many heroes,
Hubris.
which one is it?
Hubris. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which, is
Big
why I
time.
keep,
Yeah.
that's why I thought that was so important to highlight. In all of our discussions, we've been talking like this was Celebrimbor's Achilles heel. Each time
Yeah.
it's appealing to hubris. It's what we've seen Galadriel having in season 1.
Yep.
And yet this season it is being knocked away, etched away. This is shaping her to grow into the person that we know.
Yeah.
um
Yep.
Elrond as well, that we saw him in season 1 was very much, the young courtier, the young noble, that I'm going to sit in a tree and read poetry, and oh look, here's this thing. That he is clearly intelligent and well respected and wise, or at least smart. I always think wisdom is much more to do with experience than it is.
Yes, which is important to note because as you know, I am older than you, AP. So.
Yeah, but you're also shorter.
And I want to point out too how Tolkienian all of this is. That what we're talking about, hubris and the downfall of various characters, some of them noble, and admirable in many ways, tragic heroes. This is very Tolkienian, especially in the Silmarillion, So I think that they're doing a good job of exploring this through different characters. I mean, we could talk about Durin as well in the context of all of this, couldn't we?
Well, yes, my Hobbit friend. Okay, I promise to stop.
Oh,
I love
really? Okay.
on certain things. Um, with Durin, and again, this goes to Elrond and their relationship. Seeing them back together in the same room was brilliant. I hadn't realized how much I had missed that since season one.
Yeah.
And their reunion is so incredibly heartfelt,
Yeah.
particularly because Durin just starts it with insults.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because that's at the heart of their friend is they love and care for each other so much that these aren't
Right.
mean insults. It's the poking fun at your close friends.
Like calling someone a hobbit, even when he's
Well,
actually very tall.
I'm think of it. The tall, gray bearded one is the mentor who leads. And then there's the short hobbit one who's good hearted.
Wait, what I got there's some, look at this. Okay, you do have more, but I'm still older. So.
Yeah, because like clearly you're evil and have made a pact with some demon.
So, but yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you on this friendship between Elrond and Durin, and it is tested sorely in this episode. We don't know what's going to happen with that pain on Elrond's face. He is devastated when Durin's army doesn't show up because this is his friend, and you see that look on his face and his helplessness. It's not because they've lost; it's because Durin didn't show up, and that friendship has, and he thinks in that moment, has this friendship failed in some way? He was relying on that.
And we're told that the doors of Khazad-dûm are sealed. And like again, this is something that had to happen.
Right.
And what I find so brilliant about this is firstly, we get the whole stirring speech.
Yeah.
And it was really well, it was a good stirring speech.
That's
It
another
was
good actor in this show. They've done well with the actors here.
sometimes when they do those stirring speech things, you're like, was it Chad the intern? Was it his time to get something in? Because it's full of it just isn't stirring.
It comes off a little, yeah, yeah.
But with Durin's speech, that was actually quite moving.
Mm,
And it's not, when Elrond basically is telling about this, it's I'm going to overthrow my father. And he makes a decision, no, I'm going to raise the army to rescue my friend. Think of the challenge that was set to Gandalf, sorry,
right.
pseudo Gandalf in the one of the
The
earlier episodes.
stranger, the stranger. Yeah.
Save your friends or save the world.
Right.
Or sorry, go and find your staff to master your power and confront Sauron. And clearly, Bombadil is saying, "Do the right thing. Go and save your friend. That's the right thing to do. It's not about you getting power."
Right.
Durin has the same sort of choice of, do I overthrow my father? Now, it's going to be good for people if I overthrow my father because he's been corrupted,
Right.
but that's about gaining power for yourself. Whereas going to Elrond and Eregion's aid,
Right.
that isn't about power for yourself. That's about doing the right thing. So again, we see these same things being emphasized again and again and again. Like this is consistent all the way through.
Yep.
This
Good
thematic.
storytelling. It's good storytelling in that sense. And I also, just to add to that, I do feel that Durin's speech is essentially a claim of identity. This is not who we are. This is who we are. We dwarves, we're stubborn. We are loyal to our friends. And that was what I found to be so stirring about this, was this claim of identity. And this is what we want to be. This is what we should aspire to be. And it was great.
And curious, I mean, that also highlights one of the issues that Tolkien had with dwarves. Because again,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
like so many other aspects of Tolkien's work, he had initial formulations and then they got tweaked and changed over time.
Right.
But we still have fragments here and there because dwarves initially weren't one of the free races.
Yeah, they were a kind of a Aule, out of turn, was so eager to have the elves or humans or whatever it was that Iluvatar had in store wake up, that he just sort of in secret made his own little, what he thought maybe they might be, and then there were dwarves, and Iluvatar, as a punishment, said, actually no, that's not what we're doing here, and we're gonna have to put these away for now, okay? So he puts them in a slumber, and they have to wake up later because the elves have to come first. So they were in many ways, and of the earth and all of that, the mythology. around that,
Yeah, and it's slightly more problematically, they weren't good people
right?
in Tolkien's initial conception. They
And there's the element of greed that's associated with their character. Yeah,
Yeah, let's say it was just associated with their character and not about any particular stereotype that
yeah,
now, before people get up in arms about defending Tolkien about this, I know. He did change them over time.
hmm
And he came back, particularly when he was writing The Hobbit, he kind of changed the dwarves quite a bit for The Hobbit, which then led him to go back and try and retcon things and then change them again with Gimli. But it does lead to this odd notion about the dwarves, that there are different conceptions of dwarves within the whole legendarium, particularly at the different points. And Durin's speech goes to who the dwarves become in Tolkien's later writings.
uh-huh,
That it's not about avarice, it's not about wealth, it's not about selling to both sides. It's
right.
about we are proud, we are strong, we are loyal, we are friends, we care deeply. And you can understand then, like when we get to the Council of Elrond, when Gimli's there,
Mm,
that Elrond, bygones are bygones. He's still doesn't think the dwarves may be the greatest in the world, but like he's quite happy to have them there, and they came to give Bilbo a warning, and this is all great. Um, things change over time,
yeah,
and recognizing that transition. So we're actually being shown, and I think quite effectively, very early version almost of the dwarves, contrasted with what they become, with what
yeah.
Durin Jr. is espousing.
And with the ring on him, Durin Senior is, of course, embodying that unfortunate earlier idea about dwarves and the greed, and oh, we're going to sell at double the price now and delve deeper, delve deeper. And that is at the core of the story of Khazad-dûm, of course, and the unleashing of the Balrog, which I have a feeling we're about to see in the next episode. You think? Maybe. So the idea though that it's Durin, the king, who is almost single-mindedly going after this now, and the consequences of his pride. Again, the unleashing of the Balrog. No, I'm the king. I know best. This is what we're doing. We're doing it for my people. That's how it began, at least. And now it's turned into this. You talked about addiction earlier. It's turned into this obsession, addiction, and he's gone after he's delving deeper, and we know that there are going to be some massive consequences here. So
Particularly when uh, Durin has gotten the army together. They're
yeah,
going to march to Eregion, and then there's
Narvi comes. Yeah,
Narvi comes up, and he's bleeding, and it's like your father's gone mad, and he's going to go down and carve on his own, and he's so powerful because of the ring. This would be a minor thing that I don't like.
power that the ring is bestowing on him.
But it's again that physical. I can throw people across the room. Like Jackson did it when we saw that sequence with Sauron wearing the One Ring and hitting the men, and it's this giant force field, and they get knocked everywhere. Or Gandalf and Saruman having their force battle with their staffs in Jackson's version. And again, to me, that I get it's a visual medium,
Right.
but it is so reductive about the notion of power that it's about this physical power.
Uh-huh.
And I find that slightly frustrating. But again, that's a personal preference of mine.
Yeah.
But Durin Senior going down, and he is going to like plow through the mountain. He is going to release the Balrog. It's not Durin sending the army because I need an army to stop my father. It's Deez's warned him. Your father's waking. This thing is going to get loose. You need the entire army there for the Balrog,
Yeah.
not just your dad. You send everyone to hopefully get Durin back,
Right.
and then you can go and rescue Elrond. But if Durin Senior unleashes this thing, there is a monster in the darkness.
Yeah.
You need the whole army here because it's a monster That's why he recalls the whole army, or at least I
One
think so.
assumes I think that's probably correct. Yeah.
Um, and on the one hand, this it makes perfect sense. It fits, but it's the reason, the rationale, and the underpinning for why when he doesn't appear with the sun and the dawn in the way that we expect that cavalry charge to be, or the way that Gandalf did it at the Battle of the Hornburg. Instead of that, we have that moment where we have that expectation has been drilled into us time and time again with all of these stories about at the last minute, at the
Mm.
very last possible moment, the cavalry will sweep in and rescue everyone. Han Solo, like a Deus Ex Machina, will arrive just in at the nick of time
Yeah.
to do the one that's going to protect the hero while he can do the thing.
Well, you can find plenty of examples in Middle Earth of the, the cavalry, the ride of the Rohirrim, all these moments, which we love. But it's interesting to see a little subversion of that, I think, too. But I also find it interesting how Durin is doing Sauron's bidding. Durin Senior is doing Sauron's bidding by delving and freeing the Balrog. It's the influence of the ring on him again. So that's an interesting tie-in because, as you said, established from the beginning of this conversation, Sauron's influence is in those 7 rings for the dwarves. He has corrupted the Mithril, and that influence. Now, did he give him specific marching orders? Go free the Balrog for me? No, but he is doing his bidding in a broad sense, you could say there.
And again, that's what we've seen Anatar do. It's not, I'm going to order you to do these things. It's, I'm going to set it up so you think it was your own idea.
Right. And when he visited in the previous episode and said, "Hey, can you give us some mithril? We're out." And Durin Senior's like, "No, I'm going to wait until you need it even more and I can price gouge you." But then there's that little moment where, Sauron looks over in the torch or whatever and sees the Balrog. He's like, "Okay, buddy, I have a use for you."
Yeah, but the other point is that's why he is so dead set on mining out all of the mithril as quickly as possible. He needs
Yep.
it now because he knows the elves need it.
Right. Supply and
Whereas
demand. Yeah.
if Anatar hadn't shown up and specifically requested mithril,
Uh-huh.
would he be pushing as hard for the mithril, or would he be mining in other places for
Yeah.
the gold and the silver and the jewels?
Yeah. Little nudge. That's what Sauron does. Yeah.
So again, little things like that I think are wonderful. So what do we have left to talk about?
Well, we forgot to mention the demise of Mirdania, which was sad. And part of the whole Sauron's manipulation of Celebrimbor. It's just part of that picture, I think, too.
But also we've seen how it's become more and more and more overt. He doesn't need to be as subtle anymore. He doesn't need to disguise everything. It's like we are now at the end. He thinks I am now at the end stage of this plan.
Right.
Nothing you can do can derail this. It doesn't matter about those crazy kids. The plan is already done.
Right.
Um,
You've already forged these 9 rings for me. You've
he's
got it.
he's closer to Ozymandias in Watchmen than he is to your traditional villain of haha, let me explain my plan and give you time to thwart me. It's
Yeah.
like, no, I did it half an hour ago.
Right.
Um so Mordania, I feel she the use of her character was a wonderful counterpoint to the seduction of Celebrimbor through his mind, his craft, and his ambition. We
Uh-huh.
see a much more uh, traditional seduction here of the flattery, of comparing her to Galadriel, of
Right.
paying her attention, of the gentle reaching out and touching her arm. That there's that level of seduction. But again, trust, like giving her trust when Celebrimbor isn't trusting her.
Uh-huh.
So again, flattering her into this position where he can manipulate her.
Yep.
Like each time we see it so incrementally. And I think that has been really well done because if we compare Anatar in this episode to Anatar when like he's first being introduced, people are like, "Who's this bloke?" And
Yeah.
now it's, "Oh, Lord Anatar, Lord of the City." Like incrementally he has gotten there, and he couldn't have just walked out and went, "Oh, Celebrimbor's in his office, I'm taking over." No one would have believed him on the first day.
Yeah.
This is all part of a plan, but it's not one where they've done the montage sequence of him with the schematics and the map and moving people around, and then going, and then I'm going to do this thing, and on the blackboard, and then the drawing the red string between post-its to show and explain it to everyone. We've been watching it all along.
Yeah, but not everything goes his way. We'll note that at the end, the 9 rings are in the hands of Galadriel, and Galadriel's ring is in the hands of Adar. So I expect that to be something that it will have to play out over the next season, probably. I don't think that's going to be resolved in one last episode.
Well, I hope it's not resolved. I think that's an interesting choice. Obviously, completely invented.
Yes. Yeah.
It'd be really interesting
So
because
Celebrimbor does succeed to that degree. He's able to hand off the rings to Galadriel, at least. Yeah. And you have that moment when he has his followers, they're going to arrest Sauron. And suddenly you realize he's in way over his head here. And Sauron just kind of like, yeah, do you think you're the only person I've been manipulating here? And then the elves all just kill each other, you know. So yeah, a very scary end there for Celebrimbor and company.
one of the things I was going to mention about all of the action here, and
Yeah.
it's clear that I think some people reacted negatively to the amount of like sort of blood and gore that was even minimally in the first season, because there was one particular one where an orc takes an arrow to the eye. That you remember this
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
and you were a bit squeamish about that.
I actually like that better than the cutaways that we're getting now. I mean, some of them totally understandable, like Murdania, like she's basically Sauron, you know, tips her over the edge, makes it look like it was Celebrimbor's madness. And then she's still alive though, and an orc finds her and is like, you know, we just see her going, ah, and then the axe coming down. And that's totally understandable. But yeah, they have toned down the blood spurts and everything else, I guess, this season a bit.
And all, and the one that really made me think about this was Gilgalad riding past with
Troll.
his spear, riding up to kill the troll, and we have him riding up, and then we have the troll lying there in a close up of the troll's face
Yeah.
as he gets stabbed. Like that's off screen, and you're like, I wonder, was that one where he gets stabbed and there was a like that, and someone looked at it and went, "No, that's too graphic. You do that."
Yeah, we
Because a
get
lot,
his gargling laugh there at the end where he's like,
yeah.
rah.
Because then it cuts back and you're sort of like, and it's all over, and we don't see the death thrust or anything like that. So I think I would hazard a guess that they've been told to tone down the violence and make it less graphic.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Look, if we think back to a lot of the, even like in the scene where it's all like sort of hacking at each other and oh, you know, you see the stuff, but we're not getting that same level of graphic violence. There's a
Yeah.
lot of action violence, but not as much graphic violence.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Do you want a quick quibble?
Yes, of course. I'm always ready for your quibbles.
Dumbest siege engine ever. What the
It had a cool
rabbit?
name though, the Ravager or something like that. Was it that? Were they calling it the Ravager?
So they get big long pins. They hammer the pins in,
Yeah.
and then they fire it so it pulls the pins out because they're going to pull the block out. But you,
Don't you want to push it in? Wouldn't that make more sense?
you're like, this is the dumbest siege. I know it's entertaining in that it's not something I hadn't seen in fantasy before. I'd
Ever.
never seen. Oh yeah, we're gonna plug it in there, and then it's a giant sort of mangonel that's gonna fire instead of firing a crossbow. Is just gonna pull the chains and pull the thing. It's just dumb. But I have to say, I was watching this, and one of my big one of my big problems with a lot of fantasy shows and fantasy books and is not having a moat around the city. It was
Oh
so
yes, I know that's a thing with you. Yeah, yeah.
and here
A good ditch.
Eregion doesn't. I know, but Eregion doesn't have a moat. Why is AP not upset? Well, because they had a river. It
It had a
acted,
river. Yes, yes.
and they thought of a way to defeat it. And I looked at that and went, yes, proper thinking about moats.
Yeah,
I'm here for the moat thought.
yeah. You're a moat man, that's for sure. But yeah,
Um,
the that moment when they start turning their whatever they're called, trebuchets or whatever they're shooting out, and they turn them to the mountainside in order to cause the avalanche that will clog up the river, so they can. Yeah, that was it. That was fun.
and of course, Gil-galad had thought about the rivers drying up and all the fish dying. Like we saw that sort of flash forward. Is it that, or is that he's going to think it's this, but it's actually about Numenor? You
Mm,
know, there's some interesting stuff coming. But you had mentioned Mordania, so one last point on this.
okay.
I thought her scenes, her death, her whole place in this season, she was such a minor character, but carried so much about this because it's about,
Yeah.
for me at least, she in some ways symbolized Sauron's impact and manipulation of everyone. She was
Yeah.
the normal person. She was giving us an insight into how normal people are being affected,
It was the
how
every
they
elf. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Every
how
elf.
they are being seduced,
Yeah.
how they are being misled. And as cruel as it is to use her character this way, because I quite enjoyed her character,
Mm,
she shows how easily Sauron disposes of people
yes.
without a second thought.
Yeah.
That and that is a symptom, or at least a signifier of how evil he is.
Yep.
Now connect that to Adar. Adar pays lip service to not sacrificing the orcs,
Right.
but he's pretty willing for them to say, like, oh, your lives are something I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to make the sacrifice of your lives. It's going to
Yeah.
trouble me greatly, but
Yeah.
it's something we're going to have to do. So, because even when he summons the troll, it's like, but he's going to kill us. And I was like,
Yeah.
yep. But
Collateral damage. Yeah.
so there, it's not just pragmatism.
Right.
It actually goes to, do they honestly care in the same way as we do, as the elves do, as the dwarves do, as the hobbits do? That are they really capable of caring in the same way?
Well, the
And
problem with their caring is there's a lot of ego wrapped in with it, right? So
uh, and so the siege of Eregion is certainly not how I imagined it.
not my it was not what was in my imagination either, but interesting.
But I genuinely enjoyed a lot of it. And the elves being outnumbered, the who the elves are and their power, it could have very easily degenerated into a computer game of the elves like twirling weapons and going through and bodies flying everywhere. It could have very easily escalated into, but the orcs aren't really people, they're just orcs and they are disposable. And I thought one of the things that the showrunners and the writers did very well was they kept cutting back to the orcish reaction to Adar going, no, no, we're going to keep going. And it's like,
Yeah.
but we're dying out there. Yeah, but this is necessary. But we can just go. We
Right.
can leave. And because we got that, it gives it that complexity that we can't just dismiss them as, well, they're just evil cannon fodder.
Right. Right.
And that gives it weight and input. And
Yeah.
again, for people who
Agree.
don't understand this point, by saying that they're not just evil cannon fodder, I am not saying they are good. The reason you know that is because I said they are not just evil cannon fodder, and I did not say they are good. Those words are different.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I'm sure that might have happened, that someone would misinterpret. But I also, in addition to what you're pointing out, I quite like how they have these, I think, moments of subversion in the way the battle plays out. We already mentioned the non-arrival of Durin's army. How about when we have the cavalry charge with Elrond leading, and it ends with a very kind of like, "Oops, that's Galadriel. Oh no," and just stops, right? That we don't get the glorious, whipping out the swords and casting of spears and all of that. It just stops, and it's like, oh crap, what do we do? So again, another interesting subversive moment.
But one of the really cool things about that, if that had been a human cavalry charge,
Yeah.
there is no way to stop at that point.
No, no. Yeah.
But they're not human, they're the elves.
Right.
And that is one of the things I really like. They can do what we would consider to be superhuman things. Their
Right.
discipline, that the elf steeds that they have. That I actually thought that was quite impressive. At least
And
a
you
little
get a
bit.
tiny glimpse of Elrond's relationship with his steed as well, which gets killed. And yeah.
Fantasy heroes and their horses. Like we've talked about this before. Yeah.
Trope, another trope. Yeah. So.
Well, I think that covers all of the different things that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job. No doubt we forgot something or other, but that's gonna do for this episode of us talking about Rings of Power, I think. But the final episode of season 2 is gonna be our next discussion, and it's gonna be over at a Critical Dragon. So I'm hoping we'll see everybody over there for that discussion. I'm interested to see how the season ends. And I don't know if there's talk of the third season or not. I'm hoping we get a third season, but we'll see.
I, I I don't know. I generally look these things up a couple of months later once the
After the
dust has
fact.
settled on stuff.
Yeah, yeah. But it's been fun anyway talking about this series with you, AP. I'm having a blast, and that's why we're here to discuss stories and do our best to convey our take on them.
Well, very, very quickly, one of your viewers had asked, like, can I read a story and just enjoy it? And you go, but this is part and parcel of how I read. And
Yeah,
this is the kind of stuff that I deeply enjoy, seeing different connections and deeper connections and different elements that tie together. That's
yeah,
part and parcel of what I enjoy storytelling for.
yep.
Uh, but yeah, I like everyone. There's stuff that I read that I go, yeah, this is just a reading through. Oh no, look, what a
Yeah.
curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. I didn't see that coming. But it's fun and you can have fun, but you can also talk about the other stuff. And this happens to be one of the things that I greatly enjoy. The chance to speak to you, Philip, to share ideas, to talk about the different elements that we see. And you see things that I don't. I see things that you don't. Does it
Absolutely.
mean that we are absolutely perfect and know everything? No, of course not.
No, we're just having fun.
But I enjoy this type of discussion. Like this is fun for me. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh yeah, pleasure. And thank you everybody out there for watching this. And we'll see you over at a Critical Dragon for the final episode of season 2 of Rings of Power.